Good evening. Welcome to Live United, Living United, a chance for us to share some of the great services, things that are happening here in the Monadnock region that make a difference in the lives of our citizens. Today I'm joined by Sarah Berg. Sarah joins me from Southwestern Community Services, and in particular the WIC program there. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
And, you know, Sarah, you and I were talking before the show, and I think sometimes maybe people don't quite understand what WIC is. You know, you get a certain perception of it because you hear from the federal government and things. So if you could share with us, what is WIC? What's it doing here in the Monadnock region?
WIC is a USDA program. It's nationwide and all the U.S. territories. It's for women, infants, and children. That's what WIC stands for. A supplemental nutrition program that provides breastfeeding support, nutrition education, referrals to social service programs, and supplemental foods.
So who's eligible for the WIC
A woman
program?
who is pregnant, a new mom, babies, and children up to the age of 5.
So you don't necessarily have to be from a certain socioeconomic level, or
There are income guidelines, but they're fairly high. $483 a week for a family of 4. 808. I'm sorry, got that completely wrong. $883 a week for a family of 4. Anyone who currently receives New Hampshire Medicaid is automatically eligible for WIC, no matter what the household income is. Foster children are eligible, children being raised by grandparents, anyone who meets the age categories, as long as they have New Hampshire Medicaid, would automatically be eligible.
And what if a parent, a mom or a dad, just had a question about raising their child, like how to feed them, and you know, you talked about breastfeeding, but if they had questions about how do I feed my child, what am I feeding my child?
That's one of the great things about WIC is you have a chance to talk to a trained nutritionist and ask whatever questions are on your mind about feeding your child, raising your child, what to expect, how to get through the fussy toddler food jags. We talk about all sorts of things. And sometimes it's not a food-specific question. It's more, how do I cook broccoli? Or what do I do with the things I got from the food pantry? We can help with that. And we can also give referrals to other social service programs who might be able to help if you had more needs about maybe development of your child. You know, are they doing all the right things at the right age? We can get you connected with the folks who can answer those questions. But we can talk about food and nutrition and what to expect and how to get through some of the common food issues.
You know, on our show last week, we were talking about raising New Hampshire's children, and that it's all of our responsibility. And you know, in this case, it's really around the caregiver who is taking care of a child. And I think back, I can remember as a parent, one of the things I kept wondering is, when do I switch them to this kind of food and then this kind of food, and how old do they need to be, and what am I trying with them? And my daughter loved couscous. I'll never forget it. She absolutely loved couscous. And so I kept thinking, okay, but when do I bring in the broccoli, you know, the carrots, all of these different things? So this is something that can really help a parent understand that. From really prenatal, don't you also work with
Yes, with pregnant women, we can help with their food concerns while they're pregnant, but also help them get ready for feeding a baby, when and how much and how often, and all those kind of questions that pregnant women want to talk about. How to feed the baby, because all of a sudden the baby's going to be there and you want to be prepared.
Right. Right. And, you know, whether you're breastfeeding or using formula, you can assist with that. And I remember, you know, I tried my daughter on a formula, and she didn't seem to be responding well. And it was so helpful to be able to, in my case, I talked with my pediatrician, and they said, you know, switch her to more of a soy based brand, because she just wasn't responding well to formula. When I breastfed her first, and then, you know, as I was switching over and going back to work and things.
A lot of options for feeding babies, but and pediatricians are great about talking about how to feed your children, but sometimes they don't have quite as much time as you really need.
Right.
And there's a lot of other things that you need to do at your pediatrician's appointment. So even though you talk a little bit about food, you may not get all your questions answered, and that's something we can definitely help with at WIC.
And I think that's especially true now. You know, my daughter's 20 now, of course, so 20 years ago, they spent a little bit of time getting to really know you
Now
and
it's
know your
pretty
child.
quick.
Now it's 15 minutes and you're in and out, I think. So programs like WIC become very critical support systems for our families out there. I'm curious, what are you typically seeing? Are you seeing moms coming? Are you seeing dads? Are you seeing grandparents?
We see all sorts of people. We see moms and dads together, moms or dads separately, single moms, single dads, grandparents, foster parents. Sometimes if the parents are working and the appointment time's not convenient, they can assign permission to somebody else. They can give permission to their sister or babysitter or great aunt Susie or somebody else to bring the child to WIC. We do a basic health screening. We weigh and measure so we can see how the child is growing, and we do a finger prick to check iron level, which is a good screening tool just to make sure things are on track. We generally see children about twice a year just to weigh and measure and make sure everything is going okay. Generally, we see families 4 times a year. The not child visits are follow-up appointments, just a quick check. How's everything going? Do you need any information? And to get more vouchers, which are how WIC supplies the foods that are supplemental.
So I'm curious, what would be considered supplemental foods?
Well, it's not.
Is it just, you know? I think lots of times people think of it and they think it's milk.
Well, it is milk, but it's also fruits and vegetables, a whole grain choice, breakfast cereal, eggs, peanut butter or beans, cheese, and juice.
And
About
again,
$50 worth of food each month. Breastfeeding mom gets lots more food.
and that's through a voucher system.
Yes, it's like a shopping list. You take it to the grocery store, get the foods on the list, and then take another voucher another time so that it can be spread out over the month.
And you talked a little bit about that you're seeing, you know, folks, I think oftentimes people think, well, it's the mother. But you're seeing dads and you're seeing grandparents. What are the types of questions people come in with?
Well, with grandparents who are doing a lot of the child care or may have custody of the child, it's been a long time since they fed an infant or a toddler, and they just would like an update on what should I expect for the amount of food the child's going to eat, how do I get through the fussiness, what types of foods, because it's just sometimes, even if it's only been a couple years, like if mom is pregnant with a second child and the older one is 3 or 4, it may just be enough time so she'd like a refresher on what to feed the baby and when to start the baby cereal and when do you start finger foods, things like that.
I'm curious whether you've seen a shift at all in terms of what people really come to you for, because our world has changed quite drastically around us. And so you do have a different population perhaps requesting service and maybe different needs. And how are you sort of merging that changing world around us and the services of WIC?
Well, I think one thing that hasn't changed is people's desire to raise healthy children, and they really want to do the best they can, and WIC is just another place for information and support. Because they get to talk to somebody one-on-one, we hope that it's less threatening and a little bit more welcoming, so that we can meet their needs. Way back in the old days, WIC used to tell people, eat your vegetables, do this, do that. And now we're really working hard to find out what is on the parent's mind. What would they like to talk about? What are their needs?
So it has changed gradually. I was talking with you before the show, and I know some of the systems are changing. There's a voucher system for WIC right now. Is there any federal level changes that you see coming down the pike that might increase access for people that you want them to be aware of, or that perhaps will change some of the WIC services at all?
Well, we're working on going to an electronic card, which will make shopping a whole lot easier, because people will be able to buy the items that they'd like, not necessarily what's listed on the voucher. That's still probably a year and a half away for New Hampshire, but that's nationwide. That will be changing in the next few years. We've made changes so that our certification process, where we need to verify certain pieces of information, is easier now. With the Medicaid, we can just dial in an automated number, punch in the numbers, verify that the child has Medicaid, and that verifies that they're eligible for WIC. We don't need to see a month of pay stubs unless somebody doesn't have Medicaid. So our verification is hopefully easier with fewer pieces of paper that need to be brought in.
So how would a person go about accessing service? Where do they go?
In Keene, we have an office at Southwestern Community Services, which is on 63 Community Way. We also travel to Winchester and go to the Grace Christian Fellowship Church, to the Hinsdale Community Center, and to the Assembly of God Church in Jaffrey. We have appointments in Jaffrey, Winchester, and Hinsdale once a month, and appointments in Keene at least twice a week.
So as a parent, you don't necessarily need to be attending a Head Start program, for example, although they certainly could
We're right down the hall.
Right. But it could be anybody out there, any citizen who's a foster parent, an adoptive parent who's raising a child,
Yes.
who meets some of the guidelines and maybe needs that little extra boost, that little extra service.
Yes. Just to get connected with WIC, calling and usually leaving us a message, because we're not always in the office, is the best place to start. The number's on the website, or it's easy to Google it, or you can call the state WIC office. They can connect. And then we do a pre-screening to make sure that the person is eligible, and then schedule an appointment time for them to come in.
Sounds wonderful, and it's such a valuable service. Is there any thing that people can be doing? They may not need the service, but is there a way for them to support you as a service that's being offered in the Monadnock region?
They can make sure that their friends and neighbors know about WIC, and if they know of a young family that needs a little extra help, help them connect.
And again, really around assisting women, infants, and children with their nutritional needs. And also just education on, being a parent. And lots of times, even if you're not a parent for the first time, even with that second child, we were kind of joking before the show, you learn from raising the first one. But lots of times, the world does change around us, and things that you need to be doing as a parent may change in the services you need. So can you just let the audience know what your website is that they can reach out to?
SCS Helps, for Southwestern Community Services Helps.org.
So pretty easy to remember. And audience, if you can't remember that, I do want to remind you that 211 is always something that you can dial, and if you contact 211, it's a nationwide referral service, but right here in New Hampshire, they will direct you to SCS here in our region. to assist you with the WIC program and finding out, number one, whether you're eligible, and number two, then how to really access those services and connect to them. So, Sarah, you know, why is nutrition so important in early childhood?
It's just one piece of the puzzle in raising a child, I think. But if you have a healthy child, then they're much more ready to learn. They can be physically active and do the best that they can to grow up in a healthy way. But if you don't eat healthy, then you're going to have some health issues, and it just complicates life, I think. Getting an early start makes the rest of growing up easier if you establish some good habits early on.
You know, one of the interesting things that I've been seeing in a lot of the documentary work and the work going on around Impact Monadnock, the early childhood initiative here in the Monadnock region, is really around the trauma that's created in families and the impact that trauma then has on the child and their brain development. And even if a parent is feeling stress around meeting the nutritional needs of their child, that's transferred to the child through these messages that their brain then receives. So really, you know, WIC provides an incredibly valuable service to the long-term success and well-being of young people, not just from a nutritional perspective, but in terms of how their brain develops, how they socialize with other people, even the trust that they build and the safety net that they feel surrounds them in their lives and will take care of them.
And food is a lot more than just calories and vitamins and minerals. There's so much social interaction that goes on with meals and snacks and eating. Everything, or an awful lot of things in our culture are food-based. So getting a healthy start early on to know what the guidelines are and how you can help your family have a healthy perspective on food, I think is really important. Having family meals on a regular basis and knowing how much, you know, what size portions do you use so that you're not overwhelming your child, but you're giving them all the things that they need.
You know, they've shown that the family dinners in particular are something that make a difference in a child's life all the way through in terms of, you know, how you communicate as a family, the relationship you have. And I know it's something we have always done, and it's funny because my daughter comes home from college now, and it's one of the things she really values, and she even tries to transfer that over into college, where she wants to have sort of a whole group that she's really, you know, sitting down and having her meals with, not just from a social perspective, but I think it's because of the environment that she's always had.
It's nice that she had a chance to grow up in a family that ate dinner together.
Oh,
so important.
I would guess that there was probably no more than 2 weeks of us not having a family meal together
nice.
when we were all together. So even when she comes home from college now, and it's interesting because it carries over into her relationships with other people. We've had for the last 8 years a group of about 28 of her friends who always come to the house when they're home from college or wherever they are.
It's a safe place when you know that the family's going to be there at a certain time, certain occasion. And it shows how important getting off to a good start is.
It is, and it's, you know, my husband and I we're alone now in the house, but we still, you know, sit down and do dinner together because it's really our time to share and enjoy each other's company and learn, and not just about how the day's been, but, you know, really to think about other things. So that dinner time, incredibly valuable. But those are some of the kinds of tips that I think we get caught up in our busy schedules, and we forget that it can be little things. And it could be a 20-minute sit down.
Right. It doesn't
you know,
have
it's
to be
just
a
that
long
you're
time.
sitting down and you're really sort of making that part of your culture and your norm. So any other tips that you kind of want to get out there to parents right now?
Well,
So dinners are
dinners
one?
are important. Real food. and we can help connect people with resources in the area so that they can learn to cook if they don't know how, or find ways to shop more economically so that they can buy more fruits and vegetables, for example. Sometimes that's a challenge for people because unfortunately it seems like the high sugar, high salt, high fat snacks tend to be less expensive. But eating real food's not difficult, but sometimes it takes a little bit of guidance just to make that step and to make a small change. One change at a time really makes a difference.
It's interesting because I've seen a real culture shift with the generations coming up through now in terms of fruits, vegetables in particular. We were definitely, in my generation, raised on the family dinners, absolutely. We were joking ahead of time here that, my mom used to ring the bell and you better be home. But it was meat and potatoes. It was very much a meat and potato world then. My daughter now is very much a fruit and vegetable. It'll be interesting to see what she does with her children in this next generation. And I think with the whole CSA, the whole sort of throwback now to really wanting gardens and making that happen, that hopefully we'll see a shift in that. But one of the things I hear from college students and from people that are in this younger generation, this 20 to 27-year-old that may be parents for the first time in particular, they are struggling with being able to purchase fruit and vegetables and to access those foods. So, I think having a service like WIC becomes so important for them to understand, how do I change how I shop, how I cook potentially, how I utilize the food that I'm given through WIC or perhaps through the food pantry.
Right.
So all important information. So I think, when people think of WIC, it's important to remember that it's not just about nutrition supplements. It's also about really having some of that information that supports you really utilizing those supplements.
To help families get off to a healthy start so that their children grow in a healthy way and have a healthy relationship with food.
Sarah, we're coming to the end of the show, believe it or not. It's a very quick one. But I'm curious whether you have any final thoughts you want to share with our audience or any special needs you have as a program.
Right now, we would love to have more people come and see us. So please tell your friends and family about WIC. Sometimes it seems like it's a secret. I find people that don't know about WIC, even though it's been around for 40 years. We're sort of tucked away, and sometimes the office is a little bit hard to find, but we'd be happy to give you directions, and we'd love to see more families come and see us.
So, audience, I want to remind you that we have the Women, Infants, Children program here available in the Monadnock region through Southwestern Community Services. Incredibly valuable service. Even if you're not sure whether you might be eligible for that program, I would encourage you to reach out to Sarah Burke there. Again, you can go through the sceshelps.org website. You can call 211. You certainly can call the local Monadnock United Way, and we'll be happy to direct you, or just call Southwestern Community Services here in the Monadnock region. Sarah, thank you for joining us. An incredibly valuable service happening for our families out there in our future. And we always have to remember that this is about the future of our region, the future of America. I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to remind you, please give, volunteer, advocate, live united.